flags here for people to give them pause. Roy Moore was not exactly unwavering in his denials.
Well, he didn't follow the Roy Cohn playbook. I mean, he kind of did. He denied it, but not the way Trump does it, which is deny everything on every level at all times.
By the way, but this is a point that my colleague Alex Burns made, and it is dead on. Not only did he not follow that playbook, and to be clear, this is not said as an endorsement of it. It's just an analysis. When Trump was facing accusations from women following the Access Hollywood tape, Trump essentially not only refused to get thrown out of the ring, he refused to even falter. He kept going and kept going, and he showed up in public, and he continued talking to the media, not only media, but media. Roy Moore was basically invisible for the final days of this race, and there's a reason why, and it's because they were concerned that the more he was seen, he would shed support. That's not the Donald Trump playbook. That's not the Roy Cohn playbook.
That's really interesting because everybody had speculated about why wasn't he on the campaign trail? Where was he that last weekend? And you're saying it was a calculation.
Yes.
He wasn't just MIA.
And she showed up with a 12-year-old girl.
But it goes back to my original premise, which is to say if he had to go into the witness protection program because they were so fearful that he would become a gaffe reel, just imagine what we'd be entering now had he won and people were waking up to Roy Moore, United States Senator. That would have been a disaster for the GOP.
That's exactly right.
There's a little bit more of a challenge now for Democrats. They had some low fruit if Roy Moore won. They would have been able to beat the Republicans over the head with it. What will they do now? They do have an extra seat. We'll see. Michael, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Maggie.
Thank you.
All right. So coming up in the next hour, we're going to talk with Alabama Secretary of State John Merrill. He is very important. He certifies the election. What does he say? Is it over?
By the way, we're also going to have Beverly Nelson of the yearbook fame, how she feels this morning, and what is the final answer on that yearbook signature. Meanwhile, President Trump under fire for his provocative Twitter attack against Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who called it a sexist smear. The White House is pushing back, saying it's us who have our heads in the gutter. CNN's Joe Johns is live at the White House with more. What's the latest, Joe?
Good morning, Allison. So much of this is about the backdrop. You have the controversy over the president's treatment of women, which was a big issue in the campaign last year, coming roaring back now here front center stage in Washington, D.C. An insult in the president's tweet just yesterday insinuating Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, the junior New York Democratic senator, essentially would come begging to the president's office. Obviously, he wasn't in office at that time, asking for donations, begging for donations, and would do anything for them. This was seen as innuendo, a sexual innuendo by the critics of the president. Of course, the view from the briefing room here at the White House was that people were reading things into the president's tweet that simply were not there. Listen to Sarah Sanders.
I think only if your mind is in the gutter would you have read it that way. He's obviously talking about political partisan games that people often play and the broken system that he's talked about repeatedly. This isn't new. This isn't a new sentiment. This isn't new terminology. He's used it several times before.
Senator Gillibrand, for her part, said this was an attempt by the president to silence her, and she was not about to give him the benefit of the doubt.
It was a sexist smear attempting to silence my voice, and I will not be silenced on this issue. Neither will the women who stood up to the president yesterday.
Controversy coming in the midst of the Me Too movement that is now on ascent here in Washington, D.C. There are a number of Democrats, including Senator Gillibrand, calling for the president to step down, however unlikely, and some other Democrats are asking for an investigation of the president's treatment of women. Chris and Allison, back to you.
All right, Joe, thank you very much. So, Democrat Doug Jones certainly pulled off a huge upset in Alabama, but there's an interesting question here about what it means. Is this in some way the better outcome for the GOP, even though their candidate lost? Let's debate that next. Whoa.
New Day, brought to you by Marie Callender's. Today calls for comfort, so answer it with Marie Callender's.
When it's finally Sunday and you've got no plans but with your comfy pants, keep it simple with Marie Callender's roasted turkey and stuffing. Tender turkey with stuffing, creamy mashed potatoes, and made from scratch gravy. Spoiler alert, things are about to get good. Because me time calls for Marie Callender's.
One fateful day, two of Mitsubishi's safest siblings were separated. The Roberts family adopted the Outlander, while Mike and Jenny took home the Outlander Sport. But no matter where their journeys take them, they'll always be part of America's safest crossover family. The 2018 Mitsubishi Outlander and Outlander Sport, starting at $22,995. Get $3,500 cash back and make no payments for 90 days or 0% APR for 84 months.
Are you sure you're wrapping that correctly?
Oh, well, it doesn't matter how you wrap it. Your gift is already wrapped in America's most awarded network. Blanche, it happened again.
A gift is only as good as the network it's on.
This is electricity. This is a power plant. This is Tim Barkholz.
That's me.
This is something he's researching at ExxonMobil, using fuel cells to capture carbon emissions at power plants.
This is the potential.
Reducing CO2 emissions by up to 90%, while also producing more power.
This could be big.
Energy lives here.
Chinette Comfort Cup. Ready, sip, go.
When people ask me for whiter teeth, I always tell them, the thicker the enamel, the more white you're going to have. I would definitely recommend Pronamel Strong and Bright to my patients. Pronamel Strong and Bright toothpaste helps to actually strengthen the enamel. It's going to keep that enamel strong. It's going to keep it white. Patients get what they're asking for. They want whiter teeth. They're going to get it with this. Not only what dentists are looking for in the product, but also what patients are looking for in the product.
Thank you so much for co-hosting for the second time.
I've been sitting here in this dress since last year.
Really? Just waiting?
Just waiting for the call.
CNN Heroes on All-Star Tribute, live Sunday at 8 p.m. on CNN.
Mike Shea likes to go fast, always has, and nothing can slow him down, not even losing his lower leg at age 19 in a boating accident.
There's always more to accomplish. You can always improve yourself.
That spirit drives him as he prepares for the 2018 Winter Paralympic Games in Pyeongchang, South Korea.
Doing what I wanted to do and making sure that I did that 100%.
Spectrum is proud to sponsor Mike in his quest for gold because we understand that to be the best, our work is never done.
You'll notice something about us. Even though we've built a best-in-class network, connecting over 500 million devices nationwide, putting TV on more platforms than ever before, and delivering enough bandwidth to power whatever comes next, we're still not satisfied. We remain 100% committed to improving every single day. Spectrum, redefining what a cable company can be.
This is CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Republicans lost a key seat in the Senate with this Alabama race, and now some party leaders are pointing fingers. That happens. Republican Congressman Peter King here in New York, he tweets this morning, after Alabama disaster, GOP must do right thing and dump Steve Bannon. I didn't know that Bannon was a GOP official, but his act is tired, inane, and morally vacuous. If we are to make America great again for all Americans, Bannon must go and go now. Was this a Democratic victory? Was it also a little bit of a win for the GOP overall? Confusing? Let's discuss. CNN political commentators Ed Martin and Margaret Hoover. It's great to have you both here. If I don't see you, Merry Christmas to you and your families. All right, so Ed Martin, you lost. That's bad. You lost a seat. That's bad, but you do not have me beating you over the head with Roy Moore from now through the midterms. Is there a little bit of a plus and minus here?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Smerconish say that or say something like that. I think there's something to that. Look, it was the president used a good word, hard-fought election last night in his tweet. I think the details that are coming out, and this is why I think people like me are going to look at the party. Now it turns out that the Democrats and the outside groups, you know, Priorities USA, spent millions to turn out the vote. And so we were outspent, meaning the Republican side, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 to 1. And when you get outspent, you lose. So I think the party's going to have to regroup. But look, I I was someone who said Roy Moore deserved a chance. The people should speak. The people spoke. I think Roy Moore should not drag this out. We should move on, and we will. And the president will, his vision will be a part of what's the future.
Casting Roy Moore as an underdog is unusual, and it's interesting because the president got outspent, but he won. How do you take this?
Look, first of all, if the Republican Party had fielded a candidate that had any sense of moral decency, and if the Republican Party establishment had really taken a consistent stand and been morally courageous, we wouldn't have had this issue anyway, okay? The funding problem resulted from the fact that we had a terrible candidate, that this was an embarrassment, it was outrage. And by the way, this was not all Democratic money that went into this race to support the Doug Jones. There was Republican money on the sidelines that was, frankly, maybe not helping Doug Jones, but certainly not helping Roy Moore. Bannon also, for the Republicans who are not Bannon Republicans, which, by the way, until the last 2 years, had been the majority of the party, Bannon takes a significant beating here, too, on the money side, because not only had he lost a serious Republican funder in Mercer, but there were big Republican CEO donors who had supported the Conservative Principles PAC, which was the PAC supporting Roy Moore. A big CEO, Dick Uihlein from Chicago, who had put $100,000, 6 figures in, at least, to this race. Bannon is going to have to look for a source of new funding. He is not going to be able to do what he says he's going to do to the Republican Party, which is uproot it and be a complete insurgent and change the direction of the Republican Party if he doesn't have his funding. So this seriously sets back the possibility of Bannon changing the course of the Republican Party.
Ed, what's your take on that? And first start with the idea of Peter King giving so much legitimacy to Bannon. I mean, you know, I've always just seen him as kind of an outlier, you know, a character. He wormed his way in there with Trump and he had some kind of a bond. But is he that important to your party?
Well, I think Margaret brings up a good point, and we are still going to fight this. She pointed out 2 years ago you would not have had a party that said they were against trade deals, against amnesty for illegals, against the immigration, and that is a big fight. It's a fight against from the old guard establishment, we call it, and the new wave. Look, Bannon's the first one to say he's not on the ballot. What he has done, though, is he's focused a bunch of people on those issues of nationalist, populist, and that's not going away.
Moore was his guy. He was down there in his field jacket. He made it about himself with these harangues to the voters.
Mo Brooks was his guy, actually, initially. But let me say one thing. I texted with him this morning with Steve, and the fact is that he has said often to many people that you're going to have good days and bad days, but this is a fight to take back America. And that's how people like me and out in the country really feel. This is one bad day.
That's the proposition. Was this a good day or a bad day? Because some people say it's not just what they voted against down in Alabama, it was what they voted for, that it was a call to decency. And I know that's upset by the evangelical vote that broke so hard in Moore's favor. That's a conversation for a different day. But it takes us to the Trump tweet about Kirsten Gillibrand. And I want to, because I see this as a metaphor for what we were just dealing with in Alabama, if you want to put it up to remind people. But he seemed to make suggestions in there that were insensitive, if not overtly sexist. Now, first of all, how did you see it, Margaret? Did you see this as something where Trump was playing with a sexist line when he was talking about she would do anything, that she was begging for money? Or, you know, because the USA says it was tantamount to calling her a whore. That's the USA Today's editorial board. Or do you think he was doing what Sarah Sanders says, was just talking about the rigged system?
He was not doing what Sarah Sanders says. That's her job, is to spin it as best as she can, because everybody knows this is consistent with everything he's done, starting with Megyn Kelly's blood coming out of her, all that. Right, but this is consistent. He was doing the exact same thing he's done all the way along, trying to claim plausible deniability. Your head's in the gutter. That's absurd. We all know that. And there really needs to be a no-tolerance policy from Republican women on this kind of language from the head of their party and the President of the United States.
Ed Martin, do you want to endorse what the President wrote?
Oh, of course. Look, Chris, you said it earlier. I grew up in New Jersey. You grew up in New York. Trump grew up where he's from. Here's what you do. If Kirsten Gillibrand wants to stand up and be toe-to-toe and call for resignation, she stepped into the ring. Now, whether you're black,
a whore?
No, he didn't call her anything. He did the same thing as Maggie Haberman said. This is what he does all the time. He pushes close to the line. No, he pushes close to the line. He did it to Ben Carson, Marco Rubio. Now